Hello, welcome to Knitting Advisor. Today let's have a look at how to do the knit stitch, which is your basic building block. Also, I'll show you what it looks like after you've done a few rows of it. I have here a row of stitches done using the long tail method. Now, when I start my long tail, I prefer not to have a knot in the corner of my knitting here, so you'll see that my last stitch, or my first one that I made actually, comes out from underneath the second one in the row. And that means that it wouldn't give me a very good corner. So what I do at the end of the first row of knitting is to work these two together. So I will always cast on one more than I need when I'm using this method. Okay, to knit, you actually need the stitches in your left hand. The long tail has loaded them onto the right needle. So we'll turn around, and now you'll see that there are two yarns. One of them is the tail end that was how we constructed the cast on. This I need to hold out of the way so that I don't accidentally knit with it. You'll see it comes out from between the last two stitches, and it's fine to hold it over here out of the way. However, I actually quite like the corner that it makes if I bring that across in front and hold it here. And then it twists around my working yarn and gives me a nice clean corner. Now the other thing I need is my other needle. And if you're just learning to knit, just hold this any way that's comfortable. Now the stitches on your left needle come over from the back and through the binding at the bottom there. And you'll find if you pull this front of the loop out a bit, this is the side that is fed by the working yarn. That means that stitch is sitting the right way round. And we're going to use that front of the loop. That's called the leading leg. And we're going to go into each stitch in turn and pull a new one through so that we're creating a new row of stitches. So from left to right, into the stitch behind my left needle. Now take the working yarn underneath and round the tip of the right needle, pop it down between, and then you'll be able to use this finger to draw that stitch through. And now I've got the new stitch. I don't need the old one, so I can slide that till it falls off. Now you can see the old stitch there got stretched a bit while I was demonstrating it, and I'm going to tighten that up a little. You may not need to, but what I'm going to do is pull on the working yarn and just give it a little wiggle here. So I do want that still to have some size to it. I want to be able to see through it, so don't pull it too tight. Now let's do that again. Left to right into a stitch, take the working yarn round the needle tip, down between, draw it through, and drop the old one. So you can think of it in 4 stages. In, round, through, and off. In, round, through, and off. And you'll see I'm holding this comfortable. I'm not pulling it too tight. But at the same time, you don't want these stitches to be too big. You gradually, as you do it, you'll get used to what's a comfortable feel for those stitches. You want them to be able to slide, but not be too loose. Now you'll see that this is quite a big movement. I'm holding on here, and then I have to go up and round the needle and bring that back. You can make that movement a lot easier and simpler by holding the yarn a different way. I'll show you that on the next row. Let's do a couple slowly so you can see it happening. Now you'll see I've got to my last 2 stitches here, and if you remember I made 1 stitch too many because the last one doesn't have a foundation. So I'm going to come across and go through the stitches the same way, but take 2 of them together. And I can only do to fit the needle tips because the stitches are a bit tight there, but that's how they should be. So take the yarn round. Now I'll have to hold this firmly and pull that new stitch through. Just split the thread there. There we go. So pull the stitch through, and then when you straighten up that end, you'll find that that creates a good corner on my knitting without a slip knot in it. And at this point I'm left with stitches all in my right hand again. So here, turn around, bring the other needle into the working position. You can pick up your yarn and start back on the next row. Now you should practice that until you're comfortable with how stitches work, but then I would say have a look at how to hold the yarn a different way quite soon, because you'll find it will help you to speed up and get neater knitting quite soon. So to hold the yarn a different way, take your hand, fourth finger, right round under and round the yarn, and then hold on with these two fingers, and you'll find that you can hold that quite firmly, or you can let it slide as you choose. So I'm in complete control of how fast this feeds through. So let me do that again. Right round the yarn and then hold both together. The other part of it is to take my first finger and point away from myself under there, and now I can hold on to the needle, and this finger is in complete control of how tight each stitch is, and down here I'm in control of how fast my yarn feeds through. So that actually allows me to relax my hands, because now I can see what's happening here. And also this is coming over the front of my finger, so I can see exactly what I'm doing. So let's try a bit of knitting like this. And you can see already I can use that finger much more easily to go round the needle tip. You can be much more careful with exactly where it's placed. And that can become quite quick. Now, another stage of this, so that you don't let go every time, is to hold on to your needle between your second finger and your thumb and pivot. So I'll put my needle in and actually just pivot up there. And you'll find that when you do that, that you're not letting go, nothing is going to slip, and it's a much more economical movement. And in the end, when you get used to it, that will allow you to go much quicker, and it's a much smaller movement. You're less likely to get any kind of hand strain. Now, I didn't bother letting go when I turned my knitting around. It doesn't matter whether you do or not. I'm going to knit ahead and do a few rows quickly, and then check back when we've got those done. Okay, I've done a few rows there. Now let's have a look. You'll see that I'm getting these ridges all the way up the knitting, but I'm getting those on the other side as well. And each ridge is formed by the back of your knit stitches. So this last row that I've just finished, I've got knit stitches here, the same as I had with the cast on row, and then the ridge on the back. So the ridges go alternate sides, which means at this point that as I've been knitting every row, I can just count up my ridges and it'll tell me how many rows I've done. So I've got 1, 2, 3 ridges here. Don't count this bottom one, that's part of the cast on. And 1, 2, 3 ridges on this side, so that means I've got 6 rows, 3 ridges on each side. Now a couple of things to look at here. One is that you'll see that this last stitch looks rather big, and if you're not sure where your stitches are, sometimes that can pull up a bit big. If you're not sure where this goes and where your stitches are, pull down on your knitting and you'll find that that stitch will appear on the needle, and I can bring that over and I can see where it is. But let's look at that big stitch for a moment. It's going to happen at the end of every row. It's a perfectly natural part of knitting. As you go along, both needles are going through each stitch, and the stitch gets stretched. When you move on to the next stitch, that extra bit of yarn gets pulled into the next stitch, and so on. The excess gets pulled all the way along the row, and it all lands in that last stitch. And at that point, it's got nowhere to go because there isn't another stitch to pull it into. But you don't need to worry about it, because when you start the next row, some of the size of that stitch will get wound up into the beginning of the next row. And you can see down here, 2 rows back, there's no big stitch, or in the one before. So it's not a problem. And there you go. Now when you knit every row like this, that's called garter stitch. And it looks the same on each side. Thanks for watching. Please go to knittingadvisor.com to check out our other videos and to leave us a suggestion of any other techniques you would like us to record.